Okay, so Cursed, episode 10. This episode is called The Sacrifice, and I had been pretty consistently disappointed with this whole season. There were a couple of episodes that I liked quite a bit, but overall I wasn't too happy with this season. Having said that, this finale still managed to disappoint me quite a bit. I think the biggest thing that kind of confused me was how much stuff is left unresolved by the end of the season. I expected it to kind of wrap everything up, but still leave enough room for a second season if people like this enough to warrant making a second season. The problem is, King Arthur and its surrounding mythology is not super well liked by the general public. I like King Arthur quite a bit, but I feel like King Arthur and all of the stories about him are kind of a niche entertainment, and I don't think that there are quite enough people out there to warrant trying to bait us with possibly a second season when this season barely managed to tell a coherent story. I don't know if the people who don't know anything about King Arthur are going to enjoy themselves here, and I'm not really sure if the people who like King Arthur are going to enjoy themselves. Now, it's possible that other people who really like King Arthur are able to put aside their interests and what they like about King Arthur and then enjoy this as its own thing. I tried to do that, and I still had a hard time enjoying this. So I'm not really sure who this series is for. But even with when I was counting up all the different subplots and the different characters who are all doing their own thing and acting with their own interests at heart, I was counting all that up in my review of episode 9, and there was like 11 different factions that I counted up, maybe 12, maybe I forgot one. And so even with all of that, I still thought that this episode would kind of resolve everything, but still possibly leave enough room for a second season if people wanted it. But it really didn't resolve anything. So Nimue gives the sword to Morgana, and King Uther has promised to give the Fae, that's everyone under Nimue's protection, he's promised to give them ships so that they can go somewhere and build new homes somewhere else. But all he wants is the sword. So Nimue gives the sword to Morgana, and then she goes to Uther and basically says, "You're not getting the sword unless you release Gawain and Squirrel." And then he gives her Gawain, but Squirrel, I don't know where he is, and Gawain is dead. So then Nimue, she does something, blows up the camp or something, but then eventually she manages to get away with Morgana's help. Morgana meets the Veiled Woman, who's been talking to Uther, or not Uther, Merlin, since all the way back in episode 1, and then somehow Morgana merges with the Veiled Woman, and now she has the ability to tell when someone is about to die, and Merlin, he went back to Uther and said, you know, hey, you're still a good guy despite what your mother did. And then Uther figures out, wait a minute, you knew what my mother did and you didn't tell me. So then Uther's guys stab Merlin like 4 or 5 times, and that, on top of Merlin getting shot with an arrow in the previous episode, still isn't enough to kill Merlin. So then Nimue and Morgana, they rescue Merlin, and then they're out somewhere on this big stone bridge over a waterfall, and then Iris somehow was able to follow them, and remember, she wants to kill Nimue, so she shoots Nimue with a couple of arrows, and then Nimue falls over the waterfall, and then Merlin picks up the sword, and then his magic is back, so then him and Morgana teleport somewhere, and that's the last that we see of them. Meanwhile, Arthur, he is taking the Fae to the ships, and then Cumber, the Ice King, and his crew, or actually Cumber's not there, but his daughter is leading this group of bandits to try and kill all the Fae. For some reason, Cumber wants the Fae dead. I don't know why, but then the Red Spear shows up. Remember, the Red Spear is either a woman who leads a group of bandits, or it's the name of all of the bandits. I'm a little fuzzy on that, but the group that Pym was with, that is the Red Spear, or they are led by the Red Spear. But then they come in, help Arthur and the Fae fight off against the Ice People, and then Arthur saves the Red Spear's life, and then there's kind of like a, ooh, maybe these two are going to get together. And I've got a theory about that if they do a season 2, but then that gets left up in the air. And then Iris, she gets struck by lightning, part of her face is jacked up, and then she goes to the church, and then they give her this golden mask, and we saw back in like episode 5 that Father Carden, he was talking to this guy who ranks really high up in the church, and there were these people there with golden masks. So I don't know who they are. As I said, when I was counting up all the different people who are doing stuff in this series, you had the Red Paladins who are going out and killing Fae, but then you have this other faction that's also really sinister that's part of the church, and we're not told what they are, but they have golden masks, so now Iris is part of that group. through. And that's it. That's what happens. There is hardly anything that's resolved. This still leaves a whole lot of stuff up in the air. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if this series is trying to be like Smallville in that it was a reinterpretation of a well-known mythos, but it was also a prequel of that mythos, or if it's just trying to be a reinterpretation. If it's going to be kind of like Smallville, then eventually these characters are going to move into a certain place that we as King Arthur fans recognize them being in. For example, right now Morgana is friends with Nimue before she dies, and it was setting up that maybe she was going to betray Nimue because Kaliak, the spider goddess, tells her you're going to be the greatest sorceress, and then this separate mystical woman individual merges with Morgana, and now Morgana's friends with Nimue. So it was acting like it was going to put Morgan in place to be the anti-hero slash antagonist of whoever the king of the Britons are. It was acting like it was going to set that up, and then it doesn't do that. But anyway, still a lot of stuff that I do not understand here, and I don't know if other people are enjoying the series or not. I saw one review of the first episode, and it was someone who did not like the first episode. I don't know if people who are diehard Arthur fans, if they're enjoying this, if the general public is enjoying it. I highly doubt that I'm going to watch season 2, and it hurts me to say that because I wanted this to be good, and I would have been okay with it being a different interpretation. I went into the Guy Ritchie King Arthur Legend of the Sword movie willing for that to be good. I wanted it to be good, and then it just wasn't. And it wasn't that it was a different interpretation, it's that it failed on its own merits, and that's what I have to say about this series. It's a different interpretation, and to an extent I'm fine with that, but what really drove me away from this series by the end was that it failed on its own. There's like 35 different subplots that you have to keep up with, and the series can't even keep up with that stuff, and so it will just drop stuff, or it will bring stuff back that you didn't think was important, and it's just hard to understand what's going on here. Now, I don't know if season 2 pops up, if they get a season 2, and I'm still not sure if they're going to. If they get a season 2, I'm not sure if it's going to be a little bit better about all this, because like you've already got Arthur, he's with the Fae and the Red Spear, and then that's one subplot, and then Merlin and Morgana, they're a subplot, and then Iris is with the church, that's a subplot, and then Nimue, maybe she's going to come back to life, maybe somehow, and so that would be a thing, and you wouldn't have to spend as much time setting all these characters up since they're already all with each other, and you could just do stories with them interacting with each other. But I don't trust this series to do that, because it would just introduce more elements to split these characters up and create more subplots that you're having to keep up with. I don't like it. So I have a theory, and I was talking about how this series maybe is kind of like Smallville to King Arthur. With Smallville, you have characters who are in a place, and then somehow they have to get moved into a different place. So Lex Luthor, the well-known worst enemy of Superman, he's best friends with Clark Kent. Clark Kent isn't really sure if he wants to use his abilities and be a hero. He has a fear of heights, stuff like that. It's prequel jokes where it's like, you expect it to be one way, well, it's the exact opposite in this prequel. That's kind of what's going on with Smallville, and you've kind of sort of got that here, where characters who you think are just nobodies turn out to be really important. The Weeping Monk, I theorized that this was a version of Mordred, since I was pretty sure this series wasn't going to do an incest thing between Arthur and Morgan, where they would have a kid who would grow up to be the enemy of Arthur, so I figured they would just have a separate individual who's called Mordred. I was way off base. The Weeping Monk, it turns out, is Lancelot, and I feel like this is for a very, very select minority of King Arthur fans. You can go on Tumblr, find anyone who's a fan of King Arthur, and they will get out a sword and personally cut you into pieces if you say that you like Lancelot. People absolutely hate the character of Lancelot, and they talk about how he's an awful character, he's a Mary Sue, they talk about how they wish that these King Arthur stories would focus on other characters, and so I feel like making Lancelot this whiny tool that's been manipulated by the church, and he's going out here and killing innocent people, I feel like that is for that very minority of people who really hate Lancelot, so now they can say, yeah, Lancelot sucks, even though now I get the feeling that they're trying to set up a redemption storyline for him. So are these people who hate Lancelot, are they going to be happy with this portrayal? Because we're going to get more Lancelot screen time where he's, in theory, going to be set up to be the right-hand man of Arthur. He's going to be the greatest knight that the kingdom has ever seen once he's redeemed himself, if that's what they're going to do. We start off with this bad guy who's working for the church, and the church are bad guys in this case, place, and then he goes and joins Arthur when he feels bad about what he's done. So it's the opposite of what you expect with a character like Lancelot. I don't know. You also had Squirrel, the annoying kid who I kept thinking, oh, maybe in this episode he's going to die. No offense to the actor, I just found the character to be wildly annoying, and I didn't want to see him on screen. In the previous episode, Gawain finally called him by his real name, Percival. And if you don't know anything about King Arthur, this name means nothing to you. If you are familiar with King Arthur stuff, then this is kind of a name that you know. Percival is not a super well-known character in the mythos. I know of him. I know that he's sometimes the son of this one knight named Sir Pellinore. Sometimes he's a son of another guy, depending on who's telling the story. But this is not a super well-known name, so I'm not sure why they did this. This is kind of like The Dark Knight Rises at the end, where they say, oh, John Blake, your real name is actually Robin Blake. Except that everyone knows Robin in relation to Batman and. People are aware of Robin, the sidekick of Batman. But people who don't know anything about King Arthur, I'm not sure if they're going to know who Percival is. I don't know if this is going to be an, oh, okay moment for those people, or if they're going to be like, okay. I don't know what kind of okay we're getting there. And then also the Red Spear. I said that I had a theory about that. Arthur saves her life at one point, and then she says, you know, I owe you, and he says, yeah, let's go protect the Queen, and then we don't see them again, and then Nimue dies, so I have no idea if they're ever going to find out about that. I assumed that they were going to have the Red Spear say, you can call me Guinevere, my real name is Guinevere. They didn't do that, but I have a feeling if this gets a second season, that that's the direction they're going to go. Because it looked like they were maybe setting up something between these two, even though Arthur and Nimue just boinked in episode 9. I have a feeling now they're setting up Arthur and the Red Spear woman, which... okay, I mean, we barely got to know the Red Spear woman. We didn't get to know anything about her other than she's angry and she likes to yell a lot. She hates Umber. I can't remember if it's Cumber or Umber. She hates the Ice King. She hates his daughters. She killed one of the daughters, and then the other one she still has yet to kill. This series leaves so much open for a second season, and if I enjoyed this season more, then I would be excited for a second season. But this season just bungled its way all across the 10 episodes that we got that I am not in any way interested in another 10 episodes. I feel like the point that we got to at the end here, I think it could have been good. We could have worked towards that, but the first like 4 or 5 episodes was just diddling its time away, and then we could have, you know, started with like episode 4. There's all kinds of ways that I think that this season could have been better. We have Nimue eventually saying, yeah, I'm the Fey Queen, and I'm going to use this sword to protect our people. I think that's something they should have started with in the season, instead of halfway through the season, and then she's the Queen for like 2 episodes before she decides to go and turn herself in. There is so much about this series that just does not work. I almost want to watch it all again and go into like a really detailed scripted review, but I don't want to do that. I don't hate myself that much. Off the cuff is just fine for this series. I put about as much thought into these videos as the people who made this series, which is to say, not very much. So it's all right. If the very least, I hope that people who don't know anything about King Arthur, they will watch this and they will say, I really like this. I want to go and read something else about King Arthur. This got me interested, in the same way that years ago the Man of Steel movie got me a little bit more interested in reading Superman comics, or the Dark Knight movie got me more interested in reading Batman comics. I hope that this does the same thing for people who don't know anything about King Arthur. I don't know if it's going to, and if it does, I feel like people are going to be disappointed because there's not anything out there that's anything even remotely similar to this. I know this is allegedly based on an illustrated novel by Frank Miller and Tom Wheeler. I don't know if that's even out. I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it anywhere, and I don't know if that's a pretentious way of saying graphic novel or comic book, or if it's an actual novel with a picture like every 10 pages or something, but that's apparently the source material, except that I don't know if the source material has come out, in which case this is a really weird example of a show being based on source material coming out before the source material did. But anyway, that's about all that I have to say about this series. If it gets a season 2, I hope you guys enjoy it. If you decide to keep watching, I'm probably not going to, unless I hear people say that it is just amazing. But right now, I just have no interest in wasting my time with more in this world. So with that being said, I hope you guys liked this video, and I will be back in the future with some other videos about different stuff. In the meantime, have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.